Hi, I hope everyone can hear me. Just one sec, let me spotlight myself so you can all see me. Hi, welcome to the virtual open house prep session. We're gonna have a really fun afternoon of crafting and getting together all of the little bits and pieces here. I'll just give everyone a few seconds to come on in and get settled and get ready to craft. We're so excited to have you here and just so excited to be finally able to get into our virtual open house kits. So for anyone who doesn't know, I'm Kaylee with Ecstasy Crafts. Welcome to the virtual open house prep session. What do we want to get everything all set so that when it comes to the virtual open house, we are ready to rock and learn those new techniques and play with those new products and really get into the good stuff of the card making. So today is going to be kind of more of the card making basics. So I'm so glad you were all able to make it. Now, just before we get started, we're going to be doing the prep for all 10 cards that we're going to be making in the virtual open house. So just so that we can stay organized and everything, what I'm going to recommend, and I'll give you time to do it right now. What I'm going to recommend is that you get 10 plastic bags, like a freezer bag, sandwich bag, maybe 10 folders or whatever. So you can keep everything organized. We want to keep the card pieces for session number 1 with session number 1. We don't want them mixed up down the road. So I'm going to give you guys a few seconds to get those. And if you don't have that on hand, quick enough to grab, you can, just keep them in neat piles and make sure you put them in a folder afterwards because we want to keep it nice and organized. We're going to have lots of bits and pieces flying all over the place. So, we want to keep it as organized as we can. So while you're doing that, I'm just going to go through a little bit of housekeeping. If this is your first virtual class with us, you may not know. If you're returning, you should know by now that we keep everybody muted just so that there's not any background noise and distractions and that kind of thing. It can get kind of crazy with all of us in class. So we do have everyone muted. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to toss them into the chat box on the bottom of your screen, and I'll try my best to address them as they come up. I've also got Emily in the producer's booth, so she might be popping some links in as we go and answering your questions right in the chat too. So we've got that. Now, let me see. Oh, somebody's asking me to change their name. Let's see. One sec, guys. Sorry, here we go. Just a last minute fix for somebody. There we go. Okay. So while you guys are grabbing your bags, getting all set, if you haven't already ordered your virtual open house kit, it's not essential to craft along with us. I'm sure you guys may have some products already on hand that you can play with and make some similar cards. But if you want the exact kit, we've prepped it all for you, or put the bundle together. And we still have a few available up on our website. If you're watching along, I know I had some people asking for the link to craft along with us. So we do have a few virtual open house kits left. Now, let me flip us over while you're grabbing your bags. Let's see. Let's flip over and just go through, make sure you have everything in your kit so things can run along smoothly. Okay. Here we go. Oh, a substitute for the glossy glue seal and glaze. A substitute for that would be, we had a question, that would be Mod Podge if you have any. And I mean, I've even done it with just our normal acrylic glue. We can make a little bit of a paste just by adding a little bit of water. So you can give that a go as well. We just want something to tack down our rice paper with. And I don't think we're even going to need it for the prep session. I think I'm pretty sure if I'm remembering correctly, that's just what we need during class in the actual virtual open house. So you have a second to get it. Okay, so we're going through our kit. We've got our 2 polishes. We've got our Bright Sunshine and our Shocking Pink. We've got our Pixie powders. We're going to play with lots of these. We've got our little parchment piercing kit. We've got our embossing folder. We've got our nature scene die from Nelly. We've got our envelope. Oh, you can see I've been using it. We've got our envelope die. We've got our stamp from Woodware. We've got our rub-on transfers. We've got our rice paper, our foam pads, our sticky specs, and our charms. I've already taken my punch out of the box, but there's our little twin punch. Again, this one's not going to be, we won't use this one until the virtual open house class. And of course, our watercolor, my favorite crafting book. We've got a couple pieces of our craft paper. We've got a sheet of black cardstock, our yellow vellum, and then we've got our Ecstasy Crafts premium white cardstock in our kit. Okay, so I hope everyone's caught up and ready to be organized. Can't wait. Again, guys, thank you so much for joining us. I've really missed crafting with everyone. Is anybody returning? I recognize some names from some of our virtual open houses in the past and from our virtual classes. So thanks, guys, for joining in for this one. We love doing it. Okay, so for our materials, apart from our virtual open house kit, what we want to have today, we want our black, somebody unmuted. There we go, all set, okay. So we've got our black ink, our glue. We want some water to spritz on and some water to, I've just got a container, some water to rinse our brushes in. Of course, we want to have our brushes. I've got a flat brush and some other little paint brushes going. What else? We want a pen to label our plastic bags or folders or however we're staying organized. What else? I've got a little scoreboard because we're going to be making our card bases, but it's not a necessity. You can just fold your cards in half if you don't have a scoreboard, no big deal. I've got, you guys know, if you've watched my classes before, we've got our Stampin' Buddy Pro, but you know, an acrylic block or whatever you have for stamping does the trick. We've got our cutting tool. I've got my Nelly roller cutter, but whatever you guys have got. We need a little pair of scissors. What else? Oh, I've got a little water brush. I don't know if we'll get into that today, but got one. And, oh, and of course our die cutting machine. I've got that set up off to the side, ready to rock for today. So I think that does it. I think we're set and ready to get started. Let me grab a sip of water here. I'm so excited to be back. Okay. So again, guys, don't hesitate to ask any questions, but don't forget that this is going to be recorded. I'm going to try my best to get through all of the prep at a pretty quick pace. It's crafting basics. So we're going to be recording this session and we're going to send out a link of the recording to everyone. So if you start falling behind or anything, don't worry. Just keep going at your own pace, and we'll be sending the recording out along with some written step-by-step instructions with anybody who needs a reminder of a measurement, that kind of thing. But if it's just a quick question or something like that, pop it in the chat box if you need me to repeat a measurement or something. No worries, just let me know. Okay, So we're going to start with session 1. Card number 1, I guess, is going to be our parchment piercing card. So to prep for this, we are going to make our card base. So let's start with a piece of our white cardstock. I'm going to pull open my kit. Let me get my tools out of the way here. Got everything out just to put it away again. Okay. So I'm going to get my white cardstock out. And we are going to trim this to 5 inches by 10 inches. So I'm going to go 5 inches. Oops, 5 inches. Let's make our card base by 10 inches. There's our little start of our base. Now, again, if you have a scoreboard, you can score it at the 5-inch mark to give us our fold. And of course, you can always just fold it in half if you don't have a scoreboard. No big deal. I like to take, if you don't have a scoreboard or anything like that, you can always grab the edge of a pen. If you don't have a folding tool, the edge of a pen, as long as it's clean, can kind of secure that crease. And there we've got the start of our card base. So it works out to be 5 inches by 5 inches. Okay. So next up for this little card, we're going to grab our My Favorite Crafting book. And from there, we're going to find the wood grain paper. I just love this book so much. Oh, there we go. And I'm just going to pull the wood grain paper out. And we will trim it up to 5 inches by 5 inches. And that's going to be kind of the background of this card here. Why don't I pull our finished product into the frame there for you? Okay, so let's take our cutting tool and trim up a piece to 5 inches by 5 inches. There we go. Okay. Now we want to take and steal from, we need to get another sheet of white cardstock. And we're going to trim a piece to 4 3/4 by 4 3/4 inches. So we're just creating the layers. So my idea for this prep session, guys, was kind of just to get all of the crafting basics done so that we can really focus on kind of making the magic happen during the virtual open house. And I hope, you know, you guys enjoy it. And it's kind of like a bonus crafting afternoon. I love it. Okay, so 4 3/4 by 4 3/4. And you know what, why don't we attach these right now to our card base. So I'm going to use my double-sided tape to attach it, but you can use, you know, whatever. You can use your crafting glue. You can use, I probably wouldn't use foam tape to attach that one just because it's our kind of like our very background, so we can just have it nice and flat. But whatever you got, you can use your foam pads if you need to, if you don't have any other adhesives, the foam pads that come in the kit. So we will build our layers. It's Is everyone getting excited for for the virtual open house? We're just buzzing here at Ecstasy Crafts, getting excited for it. I think all of the kits that have been ordered so far, I'm pretty sure. I think one just came in today or yesterday. But other than that, most of the kits have been sent out. Obviously, you guys are here crafting with us. Have you all joined the Facebook group? That's kind of where we're posting, you know, the most up-to-date information. If you haven't, or not the Facebook group, the Facebook event for the virtual open house. It's lots of fun in there. We've got pictures of all the cards and everything. Okay, so for this one, I'm also going to just attach it with some tape, but you could absolutely use glue. You could use foam pads for this. Step it up a little bit. Using your foam pads might be nice if you wanted to add some dimension. We can do that if we want. So I know everything's been like focused on the kit and everything and all the events that are going to be happening and all the techniques and all kinds of stuff for the virtual open house. But another thing, we haven't even had a chance. There's been so much exciting news around the virtual open house. We haven't even had a chance to talk about all of the awesome deals we're going to have for you guys. So it's, you know, it's going to be really, really good and really, really fun. Okay, so now we're going to make our vellum layer. So I'm going to take my sheet of bright yellow vellum and I'm going to trim it to 4 5/8 by 4 5/8. So the 8s are always hard to count. There we go. 4 5/8 by 4 5/8. Just layering these squares on. Now the vellum, because it is, you know, semi-transparent, I like to use my sticky specs for this. And it doesn't take a lot to tack it down. It doesn't take much. So I'm going to grab my sticky spec sheet because they just are so, you can't even see them in behind these backgrounds. So they're perfect for this. But you can, again, use your glue. You can use your double-sided tape, whatever you want. I'm going to use my sticky specs. I'm going to peel my backing back and I'm basically just going to tack the corners. So I'm going to peel that clear sheet up and off and just tap my corners onto the kind of orange sheet with all those sticky specks. Tap each corner of my trimmed up vellum. And there we go. And just put that, center that up and tack it down as our next layer. Okay. So that's all the work we're going to do for this card. We're going to make the magic happen on the virtual open house. So put that into a baggie. I guess this one doesn't really have any like bits and pieces. So at least label it session 1. That's what we want to do so that we keep everything all set. And we will set that one aside. I can't wait to finish it off. Okay. This session's going to be awful because it's just going to get us all excited to finish the cards off. And then we have to wait another, what is it, 2 weeks? Another 10 days until we can finish them. Okay, so next up is session 2. And for session 2, we have a special guest, Rosemarie Kerr from Frog's Whiskers. So this isn't one of the craft along sessions, but while you guys are finishing up and getting ready for the next card, I'll show you some of the cards that Rosemarie is going to demo. So it's not a craft along, but she's going to go step by step, you know, on how she makes these gorgeous cards using her stamps from Frog's Whiskers. She is the designer and owner, her and her husband, of Frog's Whiskers in Ontario. And she just has such an awesome knowledge base. So we're super duper looking excited to learn, super excited to find out how to make those using her new stamp collections, Birds and Words. So I thought those cards go perfectly with our bright, sunshiny theme of our virtual open house. So can't wait for that. Okay, now on to, this card is going to be for session 3. So we're going to be making in session 3 the rice paper rainbow card. Cannot wait. We cannot wait for that one. So to start off, again, let's start with our card base. So we need 8.5. Is that one going to work? 8.5 by 5.5 inches. So the width of your paper should be 8.5 inches. And then trim it to 5.5. Oh, I just had a question from Maureen. Card 2 package is the rice. I guess this is card 2, but it's going to be session 3. For card 2, there's no package for session 2. It's just a guest speaker from Frog's Whiskers. Rosemary Kerr will be joining us, and she's just going to do a demo during session number 2 for that. So that's not, these cards aren't included in the 10 that we're going to make with during the craft along sessions. That's just a bonus session. So session number 3, fun with rice papers. We're starting with our card base. We've got our card base trimmed to 5.5 inches by 8.5 inches. Then we're going to score it in half at 4.25 inches to split it, or fold it in half, however you want to do it, to create our card base. This is for session number 3. Okay, now we want to take another piece of white cardstock and trim to 5.5. This one's not going to work, is it? We want to trim it to 5.5 by 4.25. So 5.5, cut your sheet in half by 4.25. And we will set that aside. And we will also take our black cardstock. You find your sheet of black cardstock, and we're going to trim it to 1 5/16. So 1 5/16. An itty bitty one. You thought 8s were bad. 1 5/16. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. And we will trim that by 2 11/16. So 2 and 1, 2, 3. So 1 5/16 by 2 11/16 for a little sheet of black cardstock. And then we're going to just take one of our scrap little bits of white cardstock and trim it to 1 1/4 by 2 5/8. There we go. And that's it. That's all. Those are our bits and pieces for session number 3. So label this for session number 3. So we can't wait. During the session, we'll play with the rice papers and learn how to use rice paper and really, like I said, make that magic happen, right? Okay, so session number 3, label it up. We don't want to get it mixed. I haven't been listening to my own advice. I haven't been putting it in my bags. I'm going to have it all mixed up if I don't do this. Okay, there. Label. Where's that little tape? Oh, the white measurement. Naomi, let's repeat the white measurement for this little piece. I assume you mean this little guy. The piece of white cardstock is going to be 1 1/4 by 2 5/8. And Antoinette, I'll try to slow down a little bit. I know I want everybody to be able to craft along and get all these bits and pieces done. Okay. So let's see, session 3. There we go. Set my bag aside. 1. Okay. Ooh. So for session 4, session number 4. In this session, we're going to be playing with building our layered step card. So, so we'll do the prep for that. And then in the session during the virtual open house, we'll really build the card and you'll learn how to make the step card from scratch, which will be lots of fun. So we're gonna just start with our card base. We want to trim a piece of white cardstock to, let's see what's on that one. We want it to trim it to 5 1/4. And I'm not using a full sheet for this. I'm just taking one of our scraps. 5 1/4 by 4 3/4. So we're making a little base here. 5 1/4 by 4 3/4. Okay. Now, we're going to take a full sheet of our white cardstock, and we're going to grab some of our mixed media. We're going to play with our pixie powder and our shocking pink neon polish. So for these guys, we finally get to get a little artsy. Okay, now I'm going to grab, make sure you have a washable craft mat down. Please, you will thank me. And I'm gonna grab some water, and I wanna use a flat brush. Now it's not a total necessity. You can still use the applicator on your neon polish, but I like the way the flat brush covers a little bit better. So what we're going to do is, where's my craft mat? Lay my craft mat down. And we're going to add a little bit of water to some of our neon polish. So we can just scoop it out If you have a palette knife, you can use that. If not, you can just use your paintbrush. So I'm going to scoop it out. I'm going to put it on my craft mat, but you can, if you have a little paint tray or a little palette, you can do it on that as well. Okay, that should be enough. And I'm just going to add some water just to thin it out to give us a really lovely pink. Mix it in really well. So because these are water-based products, we can kind of change the saturation and that kind of thing. You know, the color concentration by adding water and lighten the color up a little bit, which is tons of fun. Gonna make our own colors. And just look at that pink. Oh my goodness. Okay. Let's see, let's test a little piece. It's still pretty light. I'm going to add a bit more water. So I'm just using my spritz bottle, but add the water however you want. Just want that nice kind of watercolory look for the sky. There we go. That's nicer. Okay. And I'm going to brush it on to my onto my cardstock. I'm going to go horizontally for this one. Give a couple strokes here for our skyline. And you can add more water if you want. Brush it out. Okay, and then from the top, we're going to add our pixie sparkles. So give your brush a rinse. And what we're going to do is do our blue pixie sparkles across the top and slowly work the two together to blend that kind of skyline in to make it look like the sun is just set after dusk. So I'm just tapping some of the pixie sparkles onto my craft mat or into your paint palette, whatever you're working with. Careful, don't sneeze onto these onto these pixie powders. They'll go all over the place on you. And just activate that by spritzing it with some water. Again, we don't want it to be, well, maybe you can do whatever you want. If you want it to be super pigmented, I'm going to do just a nice light blue wash across the top of my paper. And then as I'm coming down, get the nice blue right up top. And then as I'm coming down, I'm going to mix in some of that pink, a little bit at a time. And you can see it just fades into purple, which is so fun. Keep mixing in a little bit of that pink as we go. Make sure your brush is staying nice and wet. Mix in a little more. And the idea is that it's going to fade right in to our pink that we did at the bottom. You can even bring it down. If we wanted a little less pink and make it a little more purple, we can add strokes of blue all the way across, make it really nice and dusky. You know how the sky gets striped with those red streaks? We could add more pink through if we want. Make it your own. There's no kind of sunset or night sky that's the same. There we go. Now, because we added water to this, it'll take a little bit to dry. So if you have a heat tool, you can use your heat tool on that to dry it up. Now I'm just going to rinse my brush, set that aside to dry for a second, and kind of clean up my craft mat here, or clean up your tray or whatever you want. And we'll give that a second to dry. Give you guys a second to catch up while that dries. And I guess I can leave it. I'll leave it there for you guys to see while I kind of clean up my craft mat off to the side here. So we went from a really lovely pink fade into our blue sky, kind of like a little cotton candy sky effect. Just tons of fun. I always love keeping a container of baby wipes handy for classes. Keeps me moving. Okay. Now they do dry fairly quickly. It's still a little wet. If you have a heat tool, you can speed it up a bit with your heat tool. I think I'm going to just give mine a little zap. Excuse the noise. I really love how the, because the consistency of the neon polish is a little bit more like gelatinous. I love how, because we did it first, we get kind of like a little bit of speckling. It just looks like clouds on the horizon. Very cool. Okay, so again, if you don't have a heat tool and yours is still dry, just set it aside. And like I said, we will be sending out the written instructions. You can just set it aside to dry with the rest of your session 4 prep materials. And then just follow along with the written instructions and the recording of this live if you don't have a heat tool. And if it's not dry, mine's dry enough. We're going to cut it up and trim it so that we are ready for the next piece. So we're going to cut it into 3 sections. And we're going to cut, what size do we want it? We want it to be 3.5 by 5.25. So I'm cutting off the first section, and because this is going to be the top of our sky, I'm going to trim the 5.25 inches, including the blue, if that's how you want your sky to look. I like the blue at the top of my sky. So I'm going to make sure that's included in this piece and trim it to 5.25. There we go. Then we're going to go with another 3.25 strip. sorry, 3.5 strip. We're making 3.5 strips. 3.5. So we've got our one, and then we're going to take for our next layer, it's going to be kind of from the middle of the sky. We want to cut a chunk. To 4.25. Four and a quarter. And then we'll take for our very front bit, right from the bottom, that nice pink sunset. We've got 3.5 by 3.5. There we go. A couple nice layers. Now, from our little bits and pieces, we're going to use our Nelly nature scene die and cut some clouds. So I've cut one large cloud. You can see there's 3 different sizes. I've cut one large, one medium, and 3 small. But do what makes you happy and cut some clouds out of your extra bits and pieces. Make sure you set the 3 that we've trimmed up nice aside. And we will cut some clouds out of these guys. So I'm going to grab my die cutting machine. And clouds on. So because I'm going to do the big one down here, I'm going to cut it from the blue so it pops the most. But again, do what makes you happy. And layer on my medium. Stick my small in there. And I'll run that through my die cutting machine. All right. Get off there. There we go. So we've got 3 clouds so far. There's my large and medium. And 1 small. Maybe I'll go a medium and a small this time. Oh, and then I want to do a moon too. You guys can cut out the stars. You could have a full moon. I love this die set. It has all different kinds of bits and pieces. So you could do a full moon if you wanted with the circle. I'm going to do a crescent moon. There we go. And you could add stars. This is an awesome die set. I feel like I can see myself using this in a lot of different ways in the future. Oh, and I'm going to cut my moon from the blue too. Why not? That's cute. All right. Perfecto. There we go. Okay, so I'm just going to toss this piece. There. So I've got 5 clouds total and 1 moon. But again, do whatever layout makes you happy. Okay. Stick those back on there. So don't lose them. We'll use these in at least one other card. How many? I think at least one. So we'll keep those out. Then I'm going to put my clouds and my moon with my card base. This is our session 4 bag. There we go. And then we've got our 3 pieces. So the largest, our background piece with the blue at the top, let's just stick that one right in our bag. And now the medium and the smallest one, we're going to use our cloud edger dies to trim them up. So let's go here and here. So remember, we kind of want our sky running horizontally. So that's the way I'm going to arrange my clouds. And I like to have this middle one dip down in the center. So I'm just going to get it as close to the top as I can. Now, if you have low tack tape, it can come in handy to hold that in place, hold the die in place. And then I'm going to take my other cloud edger die. It's really handy having 2. And again, line it up as close to that top edge. Remember, we want our sky going horizontally. There we go. Let's go like that. I think the cloud's a little different on each one. Very cute. There we go. Get back down there. There we go. And I'm going to run those through the die cutting machine. Is everybody doing all right? I hope. Don't forget, we're going to have written instructions along with the recorded video if you needed to double check a measurement or whatever. And again, we have Emily in the producer's booth. She can repeat any measurements you need. Okay, there we go. And there we go. Lovely, lovely. Oh, I'm so excited to bring it all together. Okay, so I'm going to take these 2 pieces and stick them with everything else in our session 4 bag. And we will come back to that during the virtual open house. Woo! All right. Session 4 is prepped. So 3 cards down. Okay. So I'm going to tidy a little. Tidy a little. And move on to session 5, where we're going to make our little sunset wishes card. So cute. So we're going to do all the prep right now, and then in class during the virtual open house, we're going to learn how to stamp with polishes, with any of the polishes from the whole Cosmic Shimmer line. So I'm excited for that one. Okay, so we're going to take a full sheet of our white cardstock to make our card base for session 5. Here we go. And we're going to trim it to 5 1/4 inches by 7 inches. So they're 5 1/4. By 7 inches. And I'm going to score it and fold it in half at 3 1/2 inches. There we go. I like this card. It's just a little bit smaller. It's quite cute. A perfect little like greeting card size, I think. Okay, so that was 5 1/4 by 7 inches, scored at 3 1/2 inches for our card base. There we go. Fold it up nice. Then we're going to grab a sheet of our craft paper from our virtual open house kit. We should have a sheet of craft paper in there. And if I remember correctly, yes, okay. So we're going to trim it, the full sheet, trim off 3 1/4 inches. By 5 inches. There we go. We can set that aside and grab a scrap sheet of our white cardstock, and we're going to trim it to 3 1/8. By 4. Did I do 3 1/8? 3 1/8 by 4 7/8. So we've got our card base, which is 4 1/4 by 7 inches, scored at 3 1/2 inches to create a card base. We've got our piece of craft paper trimmed to 3 1/4 inches by 5 inches. And we've got a sheet of white cardstock, again, trimmed to 3 1/8 by 4 7/8. Okay. Now we are going to set those pieces aside and get our washable craft mat again. And grab our Bright Sunshine metallic gilding polish and our neon, shocking pink neon polish. So I'm going to start with a coat of our Bright Sunshine. And for this, I'm going to use the applicator that comes in the lid of the Bright Sunshine polish. Now we just want to make sure it's a little damp. Mine's already damp, but give it a spritz and just wring out any excess moisture so that we can get a nice coat of our Bright Sunshine polish on there. This size, this card is 3 1/8 by 4 7/8. And we're going to brush on our Bright Sunshine polish. Lovely. Oh, look at that. Woo. Just with that applicator. I love these applicators and they're so easy to clean up. And just rinse them with water and stick them back in the top. Don't worry about cleaning up until the end of class though, because we'll be using it again. We're using it again for this card anyways. Okay, then over top, we're going to take our neon polish. And again, we want to make sure our applicator is just nice and damp. Just grab a little bit of that polish. Just a little. Oops. And we're going to swipe it over top. Really gives us a nice golden sky. Go edge to edge with this. And see how it just makes it a lovely sunset orange. Then if you'd like, you can pick up a little bit more of the polish. And just to get those streaky clouds kind of effect that I was talking about in the last card, we can swipe on a few streaks because it's fun. Why not? Oh, I got a chunk. Let's see if I can get rid of it. There. Okay, easy enough. We'll leave that to dry for a second. And while that's drying, we want to trim another piece of white cardstock to 2 1/4. 2 1/4 by 4 7/8. And we're going to use our same cloud die. There we go. And our die cutting machine. And grab the sun die too while you have that set out. So we might as well cut that while we're here. We're going to just create some lovely clouds from this piece of white cardstock. And I'm going to use my low-tack tape to hold it in place. Make sure it covers edge to edge. And have it as close to the top as you can get it. Then just from a scrap that's large enough. Will that fit? Oh, just. I love when it works out. Our sun will fit in there. We're going to trim that out too. So we'll run that through the die cutting machine. Okay. So we've got our sun cut. Oops. Low tack, not really. Got stuck on there. Okay. Oh, Barbara, to get the pads off of the applicator, I like to hold my thing like this, and they just pop off. The first couple of times they might be a little tough, but it just pops out of the top of the lid. I hope that helps. They loosen up after a couple times, but the first couple can sometimes be a little stuck in there good, so it ships okay. Okay. Get rid of the scraps. Then with our sun, since we're here, why don't we just coat our sun with our polish as well? The bright, obviously the bright sunshine polish. Well, you could do a pink sun too if you want. Nice bright gilding polish is so full of shimmer and just like truly does just look like nice bright sunshine. I love it. Okay, get a good coat on that. Set that aside. There we go. So we will put all of our bits and pieces into a baggie labeled with session 5, just to keep everything organized. Okay, get my bag out. And put all my bits and pieces. So we've got the card base, the craft paper, our little sunset card stock, our clouds, and our sun. Oops, don't lose that sun. Stick those guys in. Perfect. And we are all set for session 5. Now, session 6, if you guys are following along on the schedule, session 6, you will know, is another guest speaker, Mari Clark. She's going to be joining us and showing us some really fun and creative ways to work with washi tape on card projects. So I can't wait for that session, but that's not one of the, it's not one of our 10 cards. So we are going to skip on to session 7, where we will be making our Crafters Don't Lie card, which will be tons of fun. So we'll prep all the pieces, and then during the session, we will learn how to use the rub-on transfer stickers. They are so much fun. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to peek through and see all of the different rub-on transfers in this pack, but there's all kinds of alphabets, and then some quotes on the back page. So tons of fun. So let's prep all of the bits and pieces for this. Okay, so let's grab a sheet of our white cardstock, and I think we should have a half sheet kicking around here. We're looking for, this should do it, I believe. Yeah, we're looking for 5.5 by 8.5 for our card base. So I'm going to trim it to 5.5, 5.5 by 8.5, and we are going to score that puppy at 4 1/4. So we've got 5 1/2 by 8 1/2 scored at 4 1/4 or folded in half. There we go, card base. Now let's find that yellow vellum and trim that to, what do we want? 4 by 5 1/4. So 4 inches. 5 1/4. We want to make sure we're leaving the longest length of our vellum because we're going to use it in a later card. So we want to make sure we have a long strip left. So we've got 4 1/4. No, vellum is trimmed to 4 inches by 5 1/4. 4 by 5 1/4. Now we're going to grab our embossing folder, the Cottage Rose embossing folder, and pop our sheet of vellum in there. Now, if you can adjust the tension on your die cutting and embossing machine, have it set a little lighter than normal. And we're going to emboss this lovely, bright, sunshiny vellum. Just that. I'm using my Nelly Press Boss Pro. And you can, oh, the vellum size, we've trimmed it to 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches. So you can see just a nice light embossing is all it takes. We don't want to put too much tension on that, too much pressure, or that vellum can crack when we emboss it. So there we have it. Our embossed vellum is all set. Okay. So now we're going to find our black cardstock again. Let's find that. And we are going to trim that up. Our black cardstock is going to be trimmed to 2 9/16 by 3 7/16. So when we are trimming this black, we're going to use the black in our slimline card. So we want to make sure we're leaving enough width off one end for a slimline later in this session. Okay, so let's trim it up to 2 9/16. 2 9/16 by 3 7/16. There we go. And then we're going to take a scrap of white and trim it to 2 1/2. 2.5 inches by 3 3/8. Okay, so for our black cardstock, we have 2 9/16 by 3 7/16. And our white cardstock is 2.5 by 3 3/8. There we go. That's all the bits and pieces for session number 7. We're just clipping right along here, guys. I can't wait. I mean, I know this isn't like the most crafty fun doing all the prep work, but it's going to make it so that we can have all of the bits and pieces together for the virtual open house. So it's like when you're making a recipe. I love cooking, and it's like, you know, when you're supposed to prep all of the ingredients before you really start making the recipe. And it's nice to have a refresher of, you know, the card making, the basics. Some of this isn't so basic, actually. Embossing vellum. This is my first card I've embossed vellum on. Okay, so session 7, we've got our card base, our embossed vellum, our black cardstock, and our white cardstock pieces. You guys are doing great. Hanging in with me. We have just as many people as when we started. I was worried I was going to lose some of you halfway through. Okay. So let's set that aside. And we'll get ready. So we should have, how many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 little bags or folders of prepped pieces so far. So we're halfway through. Halfway. Okay. Oh, sorry, Antoinette, the last little piece of white cardstock for session 7, this little guy, was 2.5 by 3 3/8. Okay. So next up, we've got our bouquet of colors for session number 8. So we're going to prep everything. We're going to do, I think we'll do a bit of stamping for this prep. So make sure you've got your black ink handy and your little, either a stamping platform or your acrylic block or whatever's going. Okay, and then in the craft or the virtual open house session, we are going to learn how to mix together our water-based crafting mediums and learn how to make, you know, our own little custom color palettes. So I cannot wait for that. And again, always lots of deals. We have a giveaway for each session. There's going to be so much fun stuff going on in this virtual open house. I can't wait. I can't wait. Okay. So shall we start with our card base? We're getting in a little groove here. Let's start with our card base. So I'm going to grab a full sheet of my white cardstock. Oh, maybe. Come on, get off there. Full sheet. And I'm going to trim it. We know this is 8.5 inches. I'm going to trim it to 5.5 inches. We can set this one aside for our next card base. It's going to be the same size, I believe. So we've got the 1/2 of our sheet. And then we're going to score that. So we've got 5.5 by 8.5. And we're going to score it at 4 1/4. Or again, folded in half, whatever. Whatever. There we go. Got a card base set. Now I'm going to grab a scrap of white. This one's kicking around. I'm assuming you guys will have similar sizes of scrap. So we're all doing the same thing. Hopefully it works out the same way. But you know, whatever. We're going to just cut this to 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches. So 4 inches. By 5 1/4 inches. There we go. And we are going to emboss this guy with our embossing folder. So a little tip for embossing, it's not so necessary for, like this isn't a 3D embossing folder, but I always like to give my cardstock a little spritz. It just helps the fibers loosen up and kind of accept the embossed effect a little bit better so you don't end up with any tearing or anything like that. So just give it a little spritz of water and fold that in there. And I will run that through my embossing machine. We want to tighten it a little bit more than what we did for the vellum. Okay, got that embossed. Now let's grab a little piece of our black. Oh, it's going to be the exact size we need, I think. 1 5/16. We're going to trim our black cardstock to 1 5/16. Bang on. By 2 7/16. There we go. And then we're going to take a piece of white cardstock. Are you kidding me? Oh no, not quite. I thought that scrap was going to work perfect. Okay. So we've got our black cardstock trimmed to 1 5/16 by 2 7/16. And then we're going to trim our white cardstock to 1 1/4 by 2 3/8. There we go. Now we are going to grab a sheet of white cardstock. Set those guys aside. And our stamping platform or acrylic block. Along with our black ink. And we're going to grab the stamp from our virtual open house kit, that fun little sketched lily stamp. I always loved peeling a fresh stamp off. So satisfying. There we go. Okay, set those guys aside. Rest of the stamps aside for now. And we are going to mount our stamp, whether it's on your platform or your block. But we're just stamping. We don't have to worry about stamping the full stem and everything for this. We're going to just apply the ink to our, just the flower head to get kind of our little bouquet effect. Don't worry if you get a little bit of the stem or whatever. You can always wipe it off if you have a little baby wipe, but it's really not the end of the world if it's on there. You just want to try and not get it on the leaves or anything. And again, we're going to cut it out. You can stamp the full thing if you want, but I just mean we don't need to. Okay, so we got our ink and pop it down there. Oh, I love this lily. So pretty. Okay, and we're going to take our card stock, rotate if you're using a platform. If you're using a block, just reapply your ink and we'll stamp it again. Now you can do as many as you want to put on your card. I like, you know, the rule of threes. That's what I stick with, but whatever you want. Stamp that down. And give a quick little wipe and remount through the center because I don't want to waste any paper. There we go. Pick it up. So we're just stamping our lily 3 times. A little bit on my petal. Just wipe it off. There we go. Or not the petal, the leaves. Whatever. Beautiful. So we've got 3 stamped lilies. I'm going to clean my stamp off a little bit. I love the VersaFine for stamping. It's easy to just wipe off and carry on. Okay. So while we have our stamping stuff out, why don't we stamp our little sentiment onto here? So you can use whatever kind of combination you want. On this card, I used your array of sunshine. So from your little stamp set, peel off your array of, I suppose, of sunshine. Can we fit them both on at once? I might be pushing it. Just. So make sure it fits on that little piece of card that we trimmed. That was the, what size you want me to measure it? That was the 1 1/4 by 2 3/8 that we're going to stamp onto. And I love how the little, you know, the little bits of sentiment fit just in the S and the H. It just fits so perfect. Wonderful. Stamp it down. Perfect. Perfect. Okay. Set that aside with the rest of our bits and pieces. Give our stamps a wipe, put them back in the pack. There we go. Where'd I put the big flower? Oh. Okay. So let's start our little bag, our little session 8 bag. Session 8. There we go. Get those bits in. And then we're going to cut out our flowers. I want to cut out each flower so that we're ready to rock. And I'm just using my scissors to get as close as I can to those nice lines. I'd like to trim the rest of that sheet of paper away, just so it's not hanging on there. So just as close as we can to those outside lines. Getting rid of that extra bulk just helps clean it up a bit. There we go. Don't be intimidated by the fussy cutting. It really, you don't have to stress too much about it. It's pretty wide sweeps. And once we add the color in the virtual open house, that's really all you're going to see. You're not going to see, you know, funny little mishaps if you cut a little wonky or whatever. There's one. I'm going to pop it right into my session 8 bag. I always like to cut the bulk off. I'm not messing around with big, huge chunks of paper. There we go. I don't love fussy cutting. Some people absolutely love it, and bravo, props to you if you do, because it can really turn out so beautifully. But you know, I think I don't have the patience for it maybe. But these flowers are okay. They're nice and big, just straight lines to cut around. So it's nothing too serious. I hope you're all doing all right. Keeping caught up, trying to slow down for you. We have so much to get through. I don't want to, you know, you can always go back and watch if you have to skip a card or something. You can always watch the recording and check out the written instructions to pick up the bits and pieces if you fall behind, because it's gonna, I mean, we have 10 cards to get through. So it's a lot. It's a lot. There we go. There's our third flower cut. Stick it in our session 8 bag. And we're done again. Done with session 8. Set that guy aside. Now, up next is session 9, and that is also a special guest. Still a surprise. So if you guys aren't, sorry, I had to get a sip of water. If you aren't already, if you haven't already joined the Facebook event and RSVP'd, make sure you do, because we're going to announce the surprise special guest, the last surprise special guest. We're going to announce it there first, so you can be the first to know who our very special guest for session 9 will be. So definitely join the Facebook event for that, to be the first to know. And so, of course, there's not a craft along card for that. It's not one of our 10 cards. We're going to now move on to session 10, where we will be making our little Pixie Sparkle Peacock card. I've got all the little bits and pieces in there. So this is that cardstock that we set aside for our card base. Just a sheet cut in half to 5.5 by 8.5. So we should be fine. 5.5 by 8.5. There we go. And we're going to score it at 4.25, or fold it in half. There we go. Okay, then we're going to grab our craft paper. That craft paper is around here somewhere, that sheet that we were working on. And we're going to trim it to 4 1/8. By 5 3/8. So that craft paper is trimmed to 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. Then we're going to grab our My Favorite Crafting book. Grab our My Favorite Crafting book, and we are going to find the piece of green watercolor cardstock. Which one? You can use either one, I suppose. I think I use the ones with the trees on the bottom, but we also have this option too, which is kind of cool, a little more vintagey, the one with the leaves. So take your pick, whatever you want. I'll use the one with the trees. And pull that out of our book. And from the top corner, we're going to cut 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches. So I'm going to cut 4 inches across the top. So then I still have those trees I can use in another project. You guys are going to have so many crafting supplies left over after this to be able to keep on crafting with. Okay, so we trimmed it to 4 inches by 5 1/4. There we go. There we go. So again, we got our card base. We've got a piece of craft paper trimmed to 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. And our green watercolor cardstock trimmed to 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches. And let's set that. We'll start our, we're on session 10 already. Wow, session 10. Let's start our little session 10 bag. Okay. All right, stick these guys in. Then let's take, where is it? Let's take that leftover piece of craft paper, this leftover chunk. I think that should be large enough. And we're going to cut our envelope out. So from the Marianne collectibles, we're going to pull out the envelope. And it should just fit. And we're going to run that through our die cutting machine. I love this little die set. It's such a cutie. Like the little envelopes are the perfect size. Okay. There we go. So we won't build our envelope just yet. We'll save that for the virtual open house. So scrap out, put our die back. So make sure that little envelope gets into our session 10 bag with all the other bits and pieces. And then let's do one last trimmed up piece of cardstock. We want our white cardstock. Is this going to cut it? I've got this little scrap. We're going to trim it to 2 1/4 inches by 3 inches. Too small. Okay. So we want 2 1/4 by 3. And we'll stick that 2 1/4 inches by 3 inches, stick that into our bag, our session 10 bag. And we are set for session 10. In class, we'll play with, we get to play with the pixie sparkles and really create that classic pixie powder look and bring it all together for our pixie peacock card. Ooh, I really love all the cards, but I think this one might be my favorite. I have an affinity for the pixie powders and pixie sparkles. They're so much fun. Okay, so we'll set that one aside and get started on our session 11 card. This is going to be our slimline stamped card. Tons of fun. So we're going to prep all this little bits and pieces, and then during the virtual open house, we'll take a look at adding charms to our card making projects and really all of our, our paper craft projects, how to add those little charms on there. So for this card, you can we're going to do some more stamping for this one to prep it up a little bit. So you can grab that Lily stamp again and your stamping platform with your ink. And we will start with our card base. So I'm going to grab my white cardstock. And to create that slimline card, we're going to trim our white cardstock to, we know this is 8 1/2, and we're going to trim it to 7 1/2. So we've trimmed it to 7 1/2 by 8 1/2. We want to make sure we're taking it from the, what do I want? Let me double check. We want the 7 1/2 sides to be vertical. That's where we're gonna fold it in half so that the length of our card is 8 1/2 inches. So if you're scoring it, we want the length of our card to be 8.5 inches, and we're going to score it at 3 3/4. Oops. 3 3/4. So if you guys need another look at that, we've got our 7.5 inches by 8.5 inches, scored at 3 3/4, and folded in half. There. So our finished card is a 3 3/4 by 8.5 inches. So we've got our little slimline card there. Now we're going to take our black cardstock, and we want to trim it to 3.5 inches by 8 1/4 inches. So let's make sure we've got 8 1/4. Should be the width of it. 8 1/4 by 3.5. 8 1/4 inches by 3.5 inches. Gives us a nice little background piece. Now let's take, I believe this one will do the trick. Take a piece of white cardstock. We can use that piece that we just trimmed off of our full sheet. And we're going to trim it to 3 3/8. 3 3/8 by 8 1/4. No, 8 1/8. Sorry, guys. So we've got 3 3/8 by 8 1/8. So I'll go over those sizes again for everybody. So we've got our card base that ends up, you know, we started at 8.5 by 7.5, scored at 3 3/4. We've got our piece of black cardstock trimmed to 3.5 inches by 8 1/4 inches. And then finally, we've got our piece of white cardstock trimmed to 3 3/8 by 8 1/8. And this is what we're going to stamp onto. So why don't we start our little bag for session 11 so we can get all the other pieces put in. Session 11. Our card base and our black cardstock in there. And then let's stamp our lilies. So again, we're going to just do the petals again. And we're going to kind of create a nice little abstract background. So I think I might mount this one on my acrylic block this time. There we go. Get it fit on there as best you can. There, that's a nice angle. Okay. Oh, the size of the white piece is, the one that we're going to stamp on is 3 3/8 by 8 1/8. Okay, so I'm going to lay my craft mat down because we're going to be kind of stamping half on, half off of this. And we're just going to do a little abstract. Let me get a sip of water here. A little abstract background. And just have fun with it, guys. But here's the card. We're just going to apply our ink and kind of stamp around and make a little bit of a background pattern. So I'm applying my ink. To my petals. I'm going to take my block and stamp. There we go. And reapply my ink. And I just like to kind of fit the petals into one another so that the pattern goes around. Oh, I really like this one too. I know I just said it about the last one, but I like this one too. Okay. And again, fit my petals in to one another. Love it. Reapply. And we can be rotating too, right? To get kind of different petal looks all around. So it looks like it's not just the same stamp repeated. There we go. Reapply our ink. Put that one on there. Oh, it's coming together. Maybe we'll just do a little one up in the corner. Let's see. I don't want them to overlap. I mean, you can, of course, you can have them overlap, but I don't really want it for this one. Maybe I'll just do a little petal coming in from the side there. There. There we have it. Perfect. This one went a little, didn't cover as nicely, but I can always flip it this way and have my sentiment there and cover that up. No problem. Okay, now let's give that a little wipe up. So I don't get ink everywhere. There we go. Stamp back. I love the woodware stamps. They're just a really great quality stamp. So we can take our little stamped piece and stick it in with the rest of our session 11 pieces, which should just be your card base and your black piece. And then your stamped piece. And that is it for session 11. I'm going to finish cleaning up. Tidying up so we don't get black ink all over the place. That's the worst, black ink. I feel like color, it's like, oh, well, at least it's a nice color. But black ink where you don't want it, oh, that's the worst. Okay. So, are we ready to move on to session 12? Can you believe it? We only have 2 cards left. Only 2 cards left to make for the prep session. So let's grab, we'll put our stamping platform away. We're going to make our trifold clouds parting card for this session. Just tons of fun. A really cute one. I mean, we can fill it however we want with all different bits and pieces. So to start out, let's grab my favorite crafting book. And we're going to look for, oops, there it is, I see it. our little sky, our sky paper. Pull that out. Now, when we're going along here, remember to have your remember to have your birds facing the right direction. You can see, you know, they're flying up to the top of the card. Keep that in mind when we're cutting things and when you have it rotated, because I made my first card the birds were flying upside down and it just looked funny. So make sure your birds are flying up when we're moving along through this. Okay, so let's trim a piece of this sky card stock from the My Favorite Crafting book. Let's trim it to, this should be, let's trim it to 10.5 inches. And I actually, you know, you can choose to do it wherever you want. You can choose to do whatever you want. So let's trim it to 10.5 inches. I'm going to trim off just the piece with a little bit of glue on it, just cause, but you can trim it wherever you want. 10.5 inches by 5.5 inches. And I like to have my 5.5 inches that I'm going to use be the part that's full of birds, but you can do whatever you want. So we've got 10.5 and we're going to trim to 5.5. Now, to get that trifold card look, I'm going to score it or fold it into 3. So we want 3.5 segments. So along our 10.5 line, again, 10.5 by 5.5. Along the 10.5, we're going to make 2 folds or 2 scores, each at 3.5 inches from the ends. And that should give us the 3 panels for our card. Now, I'm not going to fold it yet because it's much easier to turn it into our clouds when it's laying flat. So keep that in mind. Okay. Now, so we're going to leave that flat. That's how we're going to store it. We're going to trim a piece of white cardstock to 3 inches by 3.5 inches. So I'm going to use that scrap that we were stamping onto and go 3 inches by 3.5 inches. Pop that in there. And let's cut out some of our cards and sunshine, or our clouds and sunshine. Oh my goodness. Cards on the brain. We're almost through it. You guys have done so great. I hope you're all keeping up and you're not just not telling me. I hope that that's the case. Okay, so we've got just a chunk of white cardstock, and we are going to get our Nelly nature scene dies and cut out our sun. I'm going to cut out the little centerpiece too, so I can pop it up. I'm going to go with my, actually, I'm going to cut my clouds out of the scrap from our sky. Let's do that. So I'm going to go large cloud from our little leftover sky bits and medium cloud. There we go. Run that through our die cutting machine. Beautiful. So we've got the 2 bits for our sun and the 2 clouds. Get that out of the way. And we can put our dies back away. Trying to keep organized. Okay, our clouds cut out of our sky paper. Look at how cute those are. There we go. Now let's do a quick stamp of our sentiment on to our clouds. I'm going to stick my little medium cloud in there. Tack it down with the magnets. And grab my stamp. I'm going to say, "You are my." Perfect. "You are my," just in the center. Stamp that on. Perfect. Wipe that up a bit. There we go. And then on the large one, let's stamp sunshine. Beautiful. It just fits. So that's on my large cloud. Ooh, there we go. You are my sunshine. So we've got our bits and pieces. And we will bring that all together. The rest of it all together. Oh, I guess we better cut our little strip of paper for our belly band. Right. Okay, so we want a strip of paper, or if you have a chunk large enough of your vellum, you could always use that. We want it to be 1 inch long by 7.5 inches long to make sure that our band can wrap around our card. Okay, so we're going to go 1 inch. By 7.5 inches. Now, again, that can be from your white cardstock or your vellum, if you have enough left. Okay, guys, there are the pieces for our trifold card clouds parting card. Oh my goodness, my words are getting jumbled. It's time for a coffee break. Okay, so we've got our card base that will fold up during the virtual open house. We've got our little white piece. We've got our belly band cut. We've got our 2 clouds stamped, and we've got our sun pieces cut out. So let's slip that into our session number 12 bag. Let's do one of those up. There we go. And slip our pieces in there for session 12. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. Okay. So set those aside. And guys, we've come to our last card. We've got session 13, our punch party. We're going to be making our butterfly wishes card, and we're going to prep all the pieces so that during the virtual open house, we can play with our punch and really dive into different ways to use punches. Let's start off with our card base. You guys guessed it. We're going to trim it to 5.5 inches by 8.5 inches. So from a sheet of white cardstock, I'm going to trim it to 8.5 by 5.5. And score it at, say it with me, 4 1/4, or fold it in half. There we go. And then we're going to grab My Favorite Crafting book, or if it's still loose and kicking around outside of the book, we just want to grab that wood grain sheet. So that was the same sheet that we cut, was it our first card out of? We're going to use that same sheet for here. So that's from the My Favorite Crafting book. We're going to trim that piece up to 4 1/4 inches. I don't know. I have the measurement written down. Hang on. Let me double check. That seems funny. 4 inches. 4 inches. Four inches by 5 1/4 inch. Now I like to have my wood grain vertical, but you can absolutely do it horizontally if you want. No worries. Then let's go ahead and trim some white cardstock into 3 5-inch by 5-inch squares. Five-inch by 5-inch-ish. Doesn't have to be exact. So there's one. Two, 5-inch by 5-inch. Just so that we don't get confused. 3 squares of 5-inch by 5-inch. There we go. Now, on each of these squares, we're going to take that flat brush that we were playing with at the start of the session. And we're going to color each of these cards with a different color using our neon polish, our sunshine yellow or bright sunshine gilding polish, and our pixie sparkles. So let's grab that flat brush. Make sure we give it a nice rinse. We'll use the flat brush for the pixie sparkles. And again, I'm just going to give them a tap, tap, tap onto my craft mat. Give them a spritz. I can't believe we've come to the last card. I hope everybody kept up all right, had fun with it. Okay, so I've added water to my blue pixie sparkles, and I'm just going to brush it on. That's it. Brush it on as dark as you want. And look at those lovely mica flecks in there. Oh my goodness. So pretty. Okay. Give my brush a rinse. And wipe up those pixie sparkles because they will get everywhere. Perfect. Now onto our next sheet of white, our 5" by 5" sheet. We're going to apply our neon pink polish. Again, make sure you get your brush damp. You don't want it soaking, you just want it damp. Pick up some of that neon polish, just a light little bit. And if you wanted a softer pink, we can always do like what we did for our sunset card and water it down first if you wanted. We'll swipe it on. Look at that. Oh my goodness. Beautiful. I love this pink. So bright and fun. There we go. Wonderful. Set that aside. And oh, we better wipe it up so we don't mix up our colors. There. And let's brush on our yellow, our bright sunshine gilding polish. All kinds of fun. Load up your brush. Or your applicator, I suppose. Again, if you wanted to water it down, you could do so. Make sure your applicator is still nice and damp. And just swipe that on there. Oh, so pretty. Now you can leave it this bright yellow. Or you can go one step further and turn it into a nice golden orange just by brushing over the leftovers of our neon pink polish just a little bit. You see how it kind of just changes color there to a little bit more of an orangey look. Whatever you prefer. You can leave it bright yellow or turn it a little more golden by just brushing on a teensy tiny. I didn't even reapply. You guys saw that. I didn't even reapply, like reopen my neon polish. Just what was left over. Just for a little subtle golden look. Awesome. Okay. So now don't forget when we're all done to wash these applicators up. I know I tuck them away in there and I forget about them. But just give them a rinse with water, wring them out, and then plop them back in the tops of the containers. And we will be ready to rock. They will be good to go for the virtual open house to continue on crafting. Now let's make sure we get these guys, these bits and pieces into our session 13 bag or folder, whatever. Make sure they get in there. Session 13. We did it, guys. Everything is prepped and ready to rock for the virtual open house. Okay, so we've got our card base, our wood grain, and our 3 colored squares. So fun. So we'll finish that card off. Make sure they're dry, guys, before maybe let them air dry a little bit on top of the bag before you stick them in there. And we'll be good to go for the virtual open house. So again, session 14, special guest, Lucy Campano will be joining us. So it's not one of the craft along, it's not one of our 10 cards. Session 14, we'll be playing with alcohol inks. Lucy is the queen of alcohol inks, and I can't wait for her session to end off the virtual open house. It's going to be such a fun couple of days that we're going to be able to craft along together. We are so excited for it. Good work, guys, on doing all that prep work. I know it's, you know, not the most fun parts, or I don't find it to be the most fun part of card making, but it's so much fun hanging out with you and doing up those bits and pieces. Again, if you missed a little bit or needed a little bit of a recap, we are going to post this session, not to worry. It will be posted to our YouTube channel in the next couple of days. It takes us a couple seconds. Thanks for everyone saying thanks in the comments. I appreciate it. We've put a lot of work into this virtual open house, and we're so excited to be able to share it with you guys. If you've got your prep work all done, post a picture to our Facebook group, Crafting with XC. I want to see all your prep work and all your different stacks of prepped cards. We can't wait. Maybe I'll post a picture of all of my little prepped stacks to the group too. And don't forget to RSVP to that Facebook event so that you can be the first to know who our last revealed special guest is going to be. We cannot wait for the virtual open house. I hope you guys have a lovely rest of your afternoon, and we will see you on June 24th and 25th to make all of the magic happen and build the rest of those cards. So thank you guys so much for joining me. Happy crafting. Bye.